So this might be one of the craziest articles I've seen in the year of 2026. How bad is Unrivaled doing? This just sums up how irrelevant Unrivaled is. We are now gone back to, is Caitlin Clark playing Unrivaled? We've now gone back to that. That for me is one of the craziest things, because if you guys don't remember what
We need to talk about what desperation looks like in professional sports media, because what you just heard represents something bigger than one clickbait article. This is about a league that spent millions building an alternative basketball product, attracted some of the biggest names in women's basketball, and is now so starved for attention that journalists are literally recycling year-old speculation just to get clicks. USA Today Sports just published an article asking if Caitlin Clark will play in Unrivaled. In January 2025, 5 months after the league started, after she's already said no multiple times. And the kicker? They misspelled her name as Clack in the article.
Did I say my team? Jesus, sorry, I'm playing too much 2K. Unrivaled. They were like actually keeping us engaged. And again, we've always said this, like, Angel Reese absolutely was a huge player for this league. Sabrina was a big name, and there was the intrigue. There was the intrigue around Unrivaled. However, we have to be real. This year, not so.
Here's the timeline that makes this so absurd. A year ago, the Caitlin Clark question actually made sense. Unrivaled was this mysterious new league, backed by serious money, promising equity stakes and six-figure salaries. The entire pre-launch hype cycle revolved around two questions: will Caitlin Clark join, and who are the mystery players? That speculation had a purpose. It was building anticipation for something that didn't exist yet. But now, the league has been playing games for months. Rosters are set. Caitlin Clark is on vacation. And we're still asking the same question we asked in December.
There's been not enough to talk about. I think Paige has been good. I will only say good. I saw somebody rank the best players in Unrivaled, and they ranked Paige at number 1. And I'm like, she's averaging like 17 points per game. And I get it. Scoring doesn't matter. Like, scoring isn't everything. And I will say this, you could argue that she maybe has been the best player on her team. Like, I would say Malonga's been very good. I'd say Rakia, like, I think her team's been good because her team has been really good.
Let's be clear about what Unrivaled actually is. This isn't some startup league playing in high school gyms. This is a professionally produced basketball league, featuring Angel Reese, Sabrina Ionescu, Brianna Stowe, Kelsey Plum, and Chelsea Gray. These are Olympic gold medalists, WNBA champions, and all-stars. The production quality is legitimate. The talent level is undeniable. And yet, when a major sports outlet needs to write about Unrivaled, they can't talk about the actual basketball being played. They can't discuss Chelsea Gray's dominant performances or the scoring records being challenged weekly. Instead, they go back to the one name that isn't there.
At the overall stats, like Paige Beckers she's leading her team in assists. That's it. That is the only stat that she is currently leading her team in. And, like, her team's been okay. She got cooked by Lexi fucking Hull. Lexi Hull had her in hell. On the defensive end, Paige Beckers was like switching off and Lexi Hull was going back to her, getting offensive rebounds. She had, like, Lexi Hull had her in fucking hell.
Now watch this part carefully, because this is where the analysis gets interesting. The commentator mentions that people are ranking Paige Beckers as the #1 player in Unrivaled. She's averaging 17 points per game. She leads her team in exactly one statistical category: assists, not points, not rebounds, not steals, not blocks, just assists. Meanwhile, Chelsea Gray is putting up performances that would be highlight material in the WNBA. Brittany Sykes has been exceptional. Arike Ogunbowale, Kelsey Plum, and Erica Hanby are all playing at elite levels, but the narrative keeps centering on Paige, and by extension, on the college basketball audience that follows her.
Incredible. The Erica Hanby, Kelsey Plum. These are all players that have been at the level, if not a higher level than Paige. That being said, like, Paige has been good. But I'm looking at it and I'm seeing Paige Becker's regularly at number 1 on the Unrivaled list. That just shows that, again, people talking about this league don't necessarily care about the league. They're just there to hype up one player. And you're looking now at Unrivaled or at USA Today Sports, they literally can't even write a proper article. They're literally there talking about, will Caitlin Clark play in Unrivaled? And they didn't mention anything. It just said, despite the league's growth, one player didn't commit, was Caitlin Clark, because of she was.
This reveals something uncomfortable about how women's basketball is covered. There's a subset of media members whose entire job is to write about the WNBA and women's basketball. These are beat reporters, columnists, and analysts who built careers in this space. And right now, in January 2025, they're facing a brutal reality. Unrivaled is happening. But the ratings aren't matching the hype. The WNBA season is months away. College basketball is in full swing, but that's a different beat. So what do you write about? How do you generate the clicks that justify your position when the actual basketball being played isn't driving engagement? The answer, apparently, is to write the same Caitlin Clark speculation article for the 100th time. Except now, it's even more desperate, because she's already given her answer multiple times.
And I will say this. They could have taken down this article. Like, instead of actually talking about Unrivaled, they know the only way to get clicks. The only way to get clicks is to say, Caitlin Clark playing? It is the only way to get clicks. And by the way, like, that's one of those things where it's like, yeah, well, duh. Like, you can make the argument of, you use Caitlin Clark's name where in any situation possible because how it gets clicks. Well, yeah, duh. But I'm not fighting against it. Absolutely.
Let's talk about what Caitlin Clark actually said about Unrivaled. She addressed this during the WNBA season. She talked about being mentally and physically exhausted after playing a full college season, then immediately jumping into a WNBA season with unprecedented pressure and attention. She mentioned the ankle injury that bothered her throughout the year. She explained that she needed rest, recovery, and time away from basketball. This wasn't a maybe next year situation. This was a clear, definitive explanation of why playing in a winter league made no sense for her career or her health. But here's what USA Today Sports did with that information. Absolutely nothing. They acknowledged she played through injuries. They mentioned she needed rest, and then they wrote an article speculating about whether she might play anyway. The headline might as well have been, "We know she said no, but what if she says yeah?"
I mean that. How is it not ChatGPT? But yeah, at the end of the day, it's one of those things where it's one of those, like, it's just mental. Everything about this, where it's like, Unrivaled has had so little hype that they're now going back to, is Caitlin Clark going to play? Ratings are down, so Unrivaled trying to attach themselves to Caitlin Clark again. It's not Unrivaled. It's not even about ratings going down. It's US.
The comment section response is telling. People immediately recognized this as a desperation move. Some speculated that Unrivaled itself planted the story to generate buzz. Others suggested this is just what happens when women's basketball journalists have nothing substantive to cover. But the most insightful take is simpler. This is what happens when an entire media ecosystem is built around one player's name, and that player isn't participating in the current product. Think about the infrastructure that was built during Caitlin Clark's final college season and her WNBA rookie year. YouTube channels exploded. Social media accounts dedicated to women's basketball went from hundreds of followers to hundreds of thousands. Sports outlets assigned more reporters to the WNBA beat. All of that growth was tied, directly or indirectly, to the attention Caitlin Clark generated.
This is what it is. There are journalists that their job is to write about women's basketball, and they know no matter what they write about, they're not going to get clicks. So they have to keep writing. They just throw Caitlin Clark's name into things to get clicks, because they know that if they write about the Unrivaled points record nearly being broken like 8 times last weekend.
Now here's the part that makes this situation so precarious. The commentator mentions that you can't just put Caitlin Clark's name in a YouTube title anymore, and automatically get 100,000 views. You can't write Caitlin Clark's European contract revealed or Angel Reese banned for steroids and watch the clicks roll in. The algorithm got smarter. The audience got more selective. The casual fans who showed up during March Madness and the early WNBA season have mostly moved on to other things. But here's what hasn't changed. Caitlin Clark is still the most reliable way to generate engagement in women's basketball content. She's just not as reliable as she was 6 months ago. So instead of getting 1 million views on a fake controversy, you might get 50,000. Instead of 100,000 impressions on a speculative article, you might get 20,000. The returns are diminishing, but they're still better than writing about the actual basketball being played.
And the funniest part about all this is it's not 2024 anymore. You can't put Caitlin Clark in the title of a YouTube video and get 100,000 views. You can't put Caitlin Clark in the title of an article and get 100,000 impressions. You can't clickbait Caitlin Clark going to Europe, that Caitlin Clark's in Europe, or Angel Reese has been banned for steroids, or Caitlin Clark's leaked European contract revealed on YouTube anymore and get 1 million views. Like, Caitlin Clark's popularity, as I've said this, Caitlin Clark's popularity amongst Caitlin Clark fans has not decreased by any means. The Caitlin Clark mania and mainstream popularity amongst non-basketball fans absolutely has dipped since 2024, and we all can admit that.
Let's examine what this means for Unrivaled specifically. This league was supposed to be the solution to a fundamental problem in women's basketball, players having to go overseas during the WNBA offseason to make real money. The concept was brilliant. Play in the United States, in a compressed season format with equity stakes and salaries that make international play unnecessary. Get the best players in the world, put them in a competitive environment, and build something sustainable. The execution has been solid. The games are competitive. The production quality is professional. The players are clearly taking it seriously. But the audience isn't materializing at the level the league needs. And when the audience doesn't show up, the media coverage becomes desperate. Hence, articles about a player who isn't in the league, has never expressed interest in joining the league, and has explicitly explained why she won't be joining the league.
She's still the only thing. She's still the only thing. And it is like, it's one of those things where Caitlin Clark playing in Unrivaled is never going to happen. She is never going to play in Unrivaled. Heather Burns on the People of Fee was talking about having in the right place. This is an unneeded article and blatantly trying to attach Clark to Unrivaled.
Here's what makes the USA Today article particularly egregious. They called her Clack. Not once as a typo, but in a way that suggests this was either written by AI or published without basic proofreading. For an article that exists solely to capitalize on Caitlin Clark's name recognition, misspelling that name is almost poetic. It's the perfect encapsulation of how little this article has to do with actual journalism and how much it has to do with SEO optimization and click generation. The commentator's reaction is justified. How is this not ChatGPT? How is this not just feeding an AI prompt that says, write an article about Caitlin Clark and Unrivaled and publishing whatever comes out? The lack of original reporting, the recycled information, the fundamental errors, it all points to content created for algorithms, not for readers.
Only way to get people talking about a league's mentioned player isn't even in the league. Someone from Rival made a call, dropped the article. I don't know. I don't think that's the case. I literally think it's the case that there is a women's basketball journalist and there's nothing going on right now, so they just attach Caitlin Clark's name to it. I think that's more than likely the scenario here. But sure, look, it is what it is. So anyway, yeah, that is the video. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. As always.
So here's what makes this significant. This isn't just about one bad article from one sports outlet. This is about the fundamental challenge facing women's basketball media right now. The sport experienced unprecedented growth in 2024, driven primarily by one player's cultural impact. That growth created opportunities, jobs, and platforms that didn't exist before. But it also created an infrastructure that's now struggling to sustain itself without that player's constant presence. Unrivaled is discovering what the WNBA learned during the offseason. The audience that showed up for Caitlin Clark doesn't necessarily stick around for women's basketball in general. Some do. Absolutely. The WNBA saw genuine growth in overall engagement, but the casual fans, the people who tuned in because of the cultural moment, They're gone until the next cultural moment happens. And that puts journalists in an impossible position. They can write thoughtful analysis about Chelsea Gray's court vision or Brittany Sykes' defensive intensity. They can break down the tactical innovations in Unrivaled's format or discuss the league's business model. But those articles won't get the engagement they need to justify their existence to editors and alums. So they write about Caitlin Clark instead, even when there's nothing new to say about Caitlin Clark. The commentator points out that there were multiple scoring record attempts in Unrivaled last weekend. Areke Ogunbowale came close. Other players had exceptional performances. These are legitimate stories about exceptional basketball being played at a high level, but writing about those performances won't generate the clicks that writing about Caitlin Clark generates. Even when the Caitlin Clark article is pure speculation based on information everyone already knows. This creates a vicious cycle. Unrivaled needs media coverage to build its audience. Media outlets need engagement to justify covering Unrivaled. The easiest way to get engagement is to mention Caitlin Clark. But mentioning Caitlin Clark in the context of Unrivaled just reminds everyone that the league's biggest potential draw isn't participating, which reinforces the narrative that Unrivaled isn't as relevant as it needs to be, which makes it harder to write about Unrivaled without mentioning Caitlin Clark. And around we go. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Is any of this Caitlin Clark's fault? Absolutely not. She didn't ask to become the center of every women's basketball conversation. She didn't demand that her name be inserted into articles about leagues she's not playing in. She gave a clear, reasonable explanation for why she's not playing in Unrivaled. And that should have been the end of the discussion. The fact that it isn't says everything about the media ecosystem and nothing about her. But it does raise questions about what happens next. Caitlin Clark's WNBA sophomore season starts in May 20. Between now and then, we're gonna see more articles like this. More speculation, more recycled takes, more desperate attempts to keep her name in the conversation. Because the alternative is accepting that women's basketball media has to survive a 4-month stretch without its biggest draw, and that's a terrifying prospect for people whose livelihoods depend on engagement metrics. The commentator makes a crucial distinction toward the end. Caitlin Clark's popularity among her actual fans hasn't decreased. The people who became genuine fans of her game, her competitiveness, and her basketball IQ are still following her career. They're still engaged. They'll show up when the WNBA season starts. But the casual mainstream attention, the cultural moment that transcended sports, that has definitely cooled off since 20, and that's normal. That's what happens with every cultural phenomenon. The question is whether the foundation built during that peak moment is strong enough to sustain the infrastructure that was created. For Unrivaled, the answer is still unclear. The league has the talent, the production quality, and the financial backing to succeed. But it needs to build its own identity separate from the will Caitlin Clark play here speculation. It needs media coverage that focuses on the basketball being played, not the basketball that could theoretically be played if circumstances were completely different. And it needs journalists willing to write those stories, even if they don't generate the same engagement as Caitlin Clark clickbait. For women's basketball media, the challenge is even more fundamental. The sport proved it can generate mainstream attention under the right circumstance. But can it sustain professional media coverage during the off-season? Can it support the journalists, analysts, and content creators who built platforms during the boom? Or will we see a contraction where only the most established outlets maintain consistent coverage and everyone else chases engagement through speculation and manufactured controversy? The USA Today article isn't just lazy journalism. It's a symptom of a media ecosystem that hasn't figured out how to function without constant access to its biggest star. And until that changes, we're gonna keep seeing these desperate attempts to insert Caitlin Clark's name into stories where it doesn't belong. So here's the question worth asking. If you're running Unrivaled, how do you respond to this? Do you lean into it and actually make a public pitch to Caitlin Clark, knowing she'll say no but generating headlines anyway? Do you ignore it and focus on promoting the players who actually chose to participate? Do you call out the media for lazy coverage and demand better? There's no easy answer. But what's clear is that building a sustainable women's basketball league requires more than just talent and production value. It requires a media ecosystem that can tell compelling stories about the sport itself, not just about the one player who isn't there. Until that ecosystem develops, we're gonna keep seeing articles asking if Caitlin Clark will play in Unrivaled, even when everyone already knows the answer is no.